On the dark and silent night of August 8th, 1963, a Royal Mail train was speeding through the English countryside. On its journey from Glasgow to London. To the outside world, it was just another routine postal run. But hidden inside one of its carriages were dozens of mailbags stuffed with cash, £2.60 million, an amount that would be worth around £67 million today, or nearly 800 rupees crore. At the controls of the locomotive was Jack Mills, a 58-year-old veteran train driver. He had spent most of his life on the rails and knew this route well. The night was quiet, the track ahead clear, and everything appeared normal, until something unexpected happened. As the train approached a remote railway crossing known as Sears Crossing, a red signal light suddenly appeared ahead. This immediately caught Jack Mills' attention. That signal was never supposed to be red, especially not at that hour, and especially not for a Royal Mail train, which was given priority passage. Still, following railway protocol, Mills slowed down and brought the train to a halt in the middle of an isolated stretch of track. For a few seconds, there was complete silence. But hidden behind that silence was a carefully planned ambush, one that would soon go down in history as the Great Train Robbery, one of the most infamous crimes ever committed in Britain. What unfolded that night was not an act of chance or desperation. It was the result of months of planning, insider knowledge, and precise timing. The mastermind behind the operation was Bruce Reynolds, a well-known London criminal with a reputation for intelligence and ambition. Reynolds wasn't interested in small-time robberies. He wanted something bigger, something historic. The key to the entire plan came from a senior Royal Mail security officer, whose identity has never been confirmed. This insider provided Reynolds with critical information about a special carriage known as the High Value Package Coach, or HVP. These coaches were designed to transport large sums of cash, mainly from money orders and interbank transfers, at a time when digital banking did not exist. Normally, an HVP carriage carried around £300,000. But this train was different. The robbery was scheduled just after a bank holiday weekend, when financial transfers piled up. On that specific night, the HVP coach would be carrying nearly £2.60 million, more than 12 times the usual amount. Even more importantly, the modern alarm-equipped HVP coaches were out of service that day. Instead, an older reserve coach, M3024M, was attached to the train. This coach had no alarm system, no electronic security, and no reinforced protection. For the robbers, this was the perfect opportunity. Although Bruce Reynolds and his associates were experienced criminals, they lacked one crucial skill: train robbery expertise. To fill that gap, Reynolds brought in another gang known as the South Coast Raiders, infamous for their experience with railway crimes. Slowly, the group expanded until more than 15 men were involved. Each had a specific role: signal manipulation, physical control, logistics, and transport. One rule was clear from the beginning: no guns, no gunfire. They wanted money, not murder. On August 7th, 1963, at exactly 6:50 p.m., the Royal Mail train departed Glasgow Central Station. It was scheduled to reach London Euston Station by 4 a.m. the next morning. The train consisted of 12 carriages and carried 72 postal workers, whose job was to sort mail while the train remained in motion. This was not a passenger train. It rarely stopped. Instead, mailbags were exchanged using a clever system of elevated trackside platforms, allowing mail to be collected or dropped off without halting the train. At Nuneaton Valley Station, the HVP coach was attached just behind the engine, exactly as the robbers had been told. By midnight, everything was perfectly aligned. At around 3 a.m., one of the gang members quietly approached Sears Crossing. He covered the green signal light with a glove and powered the red light using a battery. At the same time, the trackside telephone line was deliberately cut. Then the gang hid in the bushes and waited. When the Royal Mail train reached the crossing, Jack Mills saw the red signal and stopped the train. Puzzled but cautious, the assistant driver stepped down from the engine to contact the signalman using the line-side telephone. When he lifted the receiver, he realized the line was dead. Before he could react, Men emerged from the darkness and restrained him. At the same moment, several robbers climbed into the engine cab. Jack Mills tried to resist, but one attacker struck him on the head with a metal bar, knocking him unconscious. While chaos unfolded in the engine, another team disconnected the engine and the first two carriages from the rest of the train. Their goal was not just to rob the train, but to move it. About 1 kilometer away stood Bridgetown Bridge, where a truck was waiting underneath. The plan was to drive the engine and HVP coach there and unload the money. The gang had brought along a retired train driver to operate the locomotive. However, upon seeing the modern controls, he panicked. He had never driven that type of engine before. With no alternative, the robbers revived Jack Mills and forced him to drive the train to Bridgetown Bridge. At the bridge, the gang broke into the HVP coach. Inside were 5 postal workers who were assaulted, tied up, and forced to lie face down on the floor. The carriage contained 128 mail bags filled with £1 notes, £5 notes, and 10-shilling bills. The total weight was nearly 2.5 tons. The robbers had only 15 minutes. They formed a human chain and passed the bags down into the waiting truck. In total, 120 bags were loaded. 8 were left behind as time ran out. Before fleeing, one robber warned the staff not to move for 30 minutes, threatening their lives if they disobeyed. Then the gang disappeared into the night. The robbers escaped using an Austin Lodestar truck and 2 Land Rovers, all displaying the same fake license plate to confuse witnesses. By 4:30 a.m., they reached their hideout, Leather Slade Farm, located about 43 kilometers away. Confident they had succeeded, the gang celebrated. They listened to police communications on a VHF radio, laughed, drank, and even played Monopoly using real banknotes from the robbery. That moment of carelessness would later seal their fate. Police quickly realized the robbers could not have traveled far. Based on the 30-minute warning given to the victims, investigators calculated a 50-kilometer search radius. A local resident reported unusual activity at Leatherslade Farm on the morning of August 8th. When police raided the property, they found overwhelming evidence: mail bags, postal equipment, vehicles, and hastily repainted trucks. Although the robbers had wiped most surfaces clean, they overlooked one thing: fingerprints on the Monopoly board. Every major gang member already had a criminal record. The fingerprints matched. Within days, 14 of the 16 robbers were arrested. Only 2 men escaped justice: the replacement train driver, the Royal Mail insider, whose identity remains unknown to this day. The courts labeled the operation the crime of the century. Most of the gang members received 30-year prison sentences. Bridgetown Bridge became forever known as the Train Robbers Bridge. Jack Mills never fully recovered from his injuries and died 7 years later, his life permanently altered by one night of violence.